thank you for having me in this morning. I'm really delighted to have the opportunity to speak to you and tell you a bit about what we do, and also just so pleased to follow the speakers this morning. And the important point I want to make is that Kern County, of course, is the center of the oil and gas industry in California, and it has such a leadership position in renewable energy, and it's also such an important ag center. And what we do is we combine all three, in that we're working with the dairy industry to collect the dairy methane and then put it into the gas, put it into the pipeline, working thus with the gas company and the oil and gas industry to create a renewable fuel source and renewable energy. And so I want to tell you a bit about what we do. First, as a background, as this slide shows, many of you might not realize, but even though that while you all live here, that the Central Valley in California is responsible for nearly 20% of the nation's milk. And the dairy industry in California is about 50% bigger than Wisconsin's, which is the second biggest. California is by far the biggest. And from a perspective of creating energy, we don't create that much energy. But from the perspective of helping the state meet its greenhouse gas goals, we play a very important role. And so the numbers here is the industry could produce about 350 megawatts of baseload electricity, and that's about 850 megawatts on a peaking basis, because we could deliver the electricity when Southern California Edison or PG&E would need it. And we could produce about 170 million diesel gallon equivalents of fuel a year. We think in a measurement that most of you aren't used to. We think about everything in terms of a cow, and one cow produces about 100 diesel gallon equivalents of fuel a year. The dairy industry in the state produces about 50% of California methane emissions, and then half of that comes from how manure is managed. And so I'm going to show you a bit of how that's done and how we capture it. And the requirement is a 40% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions from dairy manure methane by 2030. To date, there are 15 active dairy digesters, while there are 1,400 dairies, so it's about 1% right now. But there's a lot of development and a lot of activity. And what's also important is all the existing dairy digesters, with one non-commercial exception, produce electricity. And there's a significant incentive and encouragement for us now to be putting that gas into the pipeline and have it be used to power trucks and buses in the Central Valley. There are major government incentives right now. Just to give you a little bit background on it, there are 2 incentive programs to help put initial projects, biomethane, into the gas pipeline. The California Department of Food and Agriculture, from GGRF funding, provided $35 million of grants in 2017 for dairy digesters, and that number increases to $76 million next year. And on the revenue incentive side, there are actually 3. I have 2 here. There's, of course, the low carbon fuel standard from California. There's the federal RIN program. And on electricity side, there's a biomat program, which is a feed-in tariff from all biomat sources, or bioenergy sources, with 90 megawatts coming from dairy and other ag sources. On an investment basis from the state perspective, dairy methane capture is one of the most cost efficient. And this is the results of a legislative analyst office study, and it's about $8 per metric ton of grant funding, government support, which makes it, in this chart, the 3rd most cost effective. So our company was founded in Bakersfield at Wool Growers, if people know the local Bosque restaurant, in 2006. And that was a pivotal dinner where I met with 10 of the local dairy farmers, and they helped us create the company. And we thought things would move very quickly, and I had more of a background in technology, and the support structure that I just referred to from the state really only came into place over the past couple of years. And so it was many years of very close working with the Sacramento policymakers and others in helping to develop the incentive programs and working very, very closely with the dairy industry to make sure these programs work for the industry. We have built 3 projects. We're completing 3 right now. We're beginning 10 more, and we're designing 25 more as we speak. We were very fortunate that we won grant funding for 10 new projects at the end of October, and that really is going to help define our work for the next, roughly the next 18 months. There are 5 goals in our company. One is to produce renewable energy. The second is to reduce dairy methane emissions while protecting local air quality, enhancing groundwater protection, and we add to the local economy and create jobs. We've spent about $40 million so far in Kern County. We will soon be spending about $60 million more, and we're also out hiring. So we really benefit from the local knowledge on the oil and gas side, and as I'll show you in a little bit, we're building a low-pressure gas gathering line system. And partly to deepen our relationships, we're very proud of the developing relationship we have with Cal State Bakersfield, where we're going to be working to help fill in the students about what we're doing, having summer paid internships for our students from the disadvantaged communities to help them learn about this intersection of ag and renewable energy. This just shows you on the map of the work we're doing with the Kern cluster, and it's 15 modern dairies southwest of Bakersfield. And the work we're doing in the Kern cluster is the basis of really our knowledge and our learning. And we're taking that knowledge from the Kern cluster and then using it for our developing efforts throughout the San Joaquin Valley. So we're now in early stages of developing 5 new clusters of dairy digesters, and our core learning has come from Kern. And we've been grateful for the support we've had not only from CDFA, but also from the California Energy Commission, and USDA. There are 3 Sustainable Freight Action Plan pilot projects in the state, and we're grateful that we're one of them, which has led to a cross regulatory agency support structure that has been very helpful to us. And locally, I could not be more grateful for the support that we've had from Kern County, from across the team in Kern County. Lorelei has been very, very helpful to us. And Craig, I wanted you to know that you shouldn't be surprised if you get a phone call from us in the near future about maybe a change or 2. But otherwise, we're very grateful for that working relationship with the county. In the Kern cluster, it has the capacity for about 5 million diesel gallon equivalents a year, or about 12 megawatts of renewable energy. And what we did is we began in the Kern cluster with electricity, and we're now migrating that our future projects will be vehicle fuel. And then the 2 of them provide a good complement to each other, with one providing long-term renewable, long-term contracts with the utility, while the other is subject to the volatility of the fuel credit markets, but also the incentives of those markets. I just wanted to show you a few slides of how a digester works. There's a screen up front, which you could see right here. Let me try this out. And this is a slope screen separator where the dairy manure water, dairy manure is moved with water. It's a very efficient way. And all the extra water over time then is used to irrigate the local cropland. And it's also a way to disperse the nitrogen, which is then used to fertilize the local crops. So the manure water goes over that screen, and then the solids are right here. And those solids are then are put out in the hot sun so that they're cleaned, and then they're used for cow bedding. The most important things to a dairy farmer are the health and comfort of their cows, and then the cows will make more milk. And then the water flows through here, and then from that right there, that is showing you just another picture of that screen, and then it flows through to this lagoon cover right here. And the digester is basically just aligned and covered, the digester is aligned and covered lagoon. And this is a picture of it when it was being lined. And it's very large. It's about 3 football fields long by 2 football fields wide. And then there's a whole second unit that's nearly the same size. This is the biggest dairy digester in the state, one of the biggest in the country, reflecting that this is a very large dairy, and it's about twice the size of probably the average that we'll be building over time. And I mentioned that we could store gas, and this is the cover inflated. We could store about a week's worth of gas, and the Public Utility Commission has actually approved dairy digester methane as an acceptable energy storage mechanism. And as I said, we can then work with the utilities and the electricity side to deliver the electricity when it's needed by the grid. This is a picture of our project generator set. We use Caterpillar engines and have a very close, terrific working relationship with Caterpillar, and it generates 2 megawatts of renewable energy. We also work very closely with PG&E, and PG&E has been very helpful to us on our interconnection efforts over the years. In electricity projects, you have a digester at each dairy, and you also have a genset and interconnection to the electricity grid at each dairy. By contrast, on the fuel side, while you still have a digester at each dairy, you're then sending the dairy biogas, which is about 60% methane, to a central location where it's cleaned up and put into the grid, and put it in it's interconnected to the pipeline system. This is a picture of the map of our Kern cluster. And in the bottom right here is our project that we've built on the Bedard Dairy. Right here is a project that will be coming online over the next 60 days. And then over here is a project that will be coming in line probably over about the next 30 days. Those are the first 3, and then we recently won grants for a project at this dairy and on these 2 dairies, and they will be being built over the next year, and then we'll also be building out the rest of the cluster in the subsequent year. Right here is the SoCal gas pipeline, and right here is the PG&E pipeline, and our plan is to be interconnecting right here into the SoCal gas pipeline. Right here is a gas gathering line that we'll be building, connecting the biogas from each of the different dairies to the centralized location. So there are advantages to electricity and there are advantages to fuel, and a couple key disadvantages to each. The electricity side, we could earn a good revenue stream of about $25 per MMBTU, which is a mixture of the renewable electricity contract with the utility and the carbon credit. And we could have a 20-year contract with the utility, so it's a very bankable contract. The problem is when we have a local electricity generator, we emit NOx, and the air district doesn't want to be having a new source of NOx in the Central Valley. We're working very closely with the air district on how to decrease our NOx emissions, but it's a significant part of the reason the Air District and the Air Resources Board has been encouraging projects like ours to put the gas into the pipeline. On the pipeline side, we could receive a fairly remarkable price, and that is about $40 to $80 per MMBTU, which is made up of the renewable, the RIN value, as well as the low carbon fuel standard value. And thus it provides the economics to be, over time, building these projects, once especially there's more certainty in those programs that we won't need the type of grant funding that we've received to date. The advantage on the NOx side is it could then be used for the new fleet of near zero emission natural gas trucks and buses that reduce NOx emissions by about 90%. And this just gives you an understanding of something so many of you in the room are familiar with, which is the low carbon fuel standard. And it works by the difference between diesel and gasoline's carbon intensity and that of alternative sources. And because we're capturing methane that would otherwise be put into the atmosphere, dairies by far have the lowest carbon intensity score that exists, helping provide the economics that can make these projects work. This is just a quick chart to show you the amount of NOx that are being reduced. One is the avoided NOx by not having the electricity engine, and the other is by replacing the diesel truck with a near zero emission natural gas truck. And these are just a couple more pictures at the Lakeview Project, one that's coming online shortly. It just kind of, these lagoons are actually very carefully designed. And this is a picture of us near a mixer that mixes the manure water to keep it flowing through at a steady rate and decrease the settling of solids, because that's kind of would be a problem over time to a digester. And this is a picture of a project that we're now constructing about 35 miles away in Buttonwillow. And then you could see on the left the liner of the lagoon. And these are built to the Tier 1 preference of the water board. And so it's really a landfill quality, which in many ways it might be overkill for dairy manure water. It enables us over time to also potentially add non-manure substrates. And that's why you see a second cell here, which is a way to potentially take non-manure substrates over time. And as the state requires a significant amount of diversion from landfills, they're looking for places to be able to take that organic matter, and this would be an example of that. And on the right here is the existing lagoon, and so you could kind of see how dirty that is, and then it will be going into the two line cells that would then be covered. We increase the amount of the solids that are destroyed by the naturally occurring bacteria, so an output of it is a manure water that's easier for the dairy to use and integrate into its irrigation system. At this project, it's actually also part of a larger study funded by USDA for drip irrigation, for drip tape. And so it's been studied on using its manure water pre-digester, and then we're all suspecting that the decreased amount of solids and the more consistent liquid water will be much easier as a starting point for drip irrigation. So that's my overview of what we're up to here in Kern County. And now I'm based up in Visalia because Kern County is where all the oil and gas industry opportunities are, and Tulare where all the cows are. And so we're following, like all of you, the cows, or you following the oil and gas industry. And as I said, we're taking that knowledge up to Visalia while we have our major operations and development efforts here in Kern County. So if anybody has questions afterwards, please come up and see me, and just want to thank you all for having me in this morning.